Hey there. In this lesson, we're going to go ahead and continue on with our seamless texture that we were creating in the previous lesson. If you want to follow along, you've probably just been working on your model. You can keep going. If you've lost it or you're coming to the game late and you just want to finish it off for some strange reason, you can go ahead and open up WoodStarter number 2.psd and let's get started. So what we have now is we have something that's 2048 pixels in this direction, the XY direction more or less. And what we need to do is we need to make this thing square. Okay, so I have this guideline here that stops at 2048. All right, and now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to make my layer current. And I'm now going to use my rectangular marquee, and I can just drag anywhere, and I can snap right to my guidelines. Okay. If you're not snapping to your guidelines, the snaps can be found up here in the view, and snap, and then snap to, and then show you all the stuff you can snap to. All right, so now that I have this layer selected and I've selected this guy over here on the bottom, I'm actually going to right click and I'm going to repeat that command again, layer via cut. I'm going to go ahead and select that, and now as you can see I've got two different layers. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and select layer number 2, use my move command, and my move tool rather, and I'm just going to pop it right up there. Okay, now I think just to make this a little bit tidier, I'm going to go ahead and crop that image because I am going to want it to be 2048. I'm just going to snap to it, and I'm going to hit enter. Okay, and so now what we have is if we turn this off and on, you see we have sort of an awkward half slat here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to scale this just a little bit, and the way I'm going to do that is first of all I'm going to hide this layer here. I'm going to go up here into where these numbers are, and I'm just going to start to grab them so I can remember, because I'm going to turn my lower layer off, so I can remember and figure out where these sort of slats are. All right, I'm going to turn that off and that on. And then what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to, maybe right here, I'm actually going to draw a marquee tool, and then I'm going to start to scale it up. Okay, so I'm going to try and snap right to here, and I'm actually going to make it a little bit longer. Okay, and then I'm going to select it, and I'm going to hit Control T for transform. So once again, Control T. I'm on the wrong layer, that's why. There we go. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to pull vertically, and then I'm going to try and get these slats to line up with those lines, those guidelines that I drew earlier. So I'm going to pull them down just a little bit, just like that. Not too bad. All right. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hit Control D and Control D. And now I'm going to go with this layer, Control D for deselect. And now what I'm going to do, get that layer current. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go up to my eraser. Watch this, as I turn this on, this lower level, things seem to be a little bit more in line. All right, so the first thing I definitely want to do is get rid of this guy right here. All right, but I'm going to go ahead and turn this lower level layer off, and I'm going to go back to my eraser. Okay, right here. I could have, of course, just hit E or Shift E if I'd gotten to a different one, but you know, this might be an intro class, so you should probably figure out where the icons are. All right, so I've got my eraser tool on, and obviously I don't need something to be 600 pixels long. I'm going to go down to 100. Yep. And once again, there we go. My layer's off. And I'm going to start to erase that, but I'm going to zoom in here. And I think my mode's a little low. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of go up and down, up and down. And one thing, when I'm zoomed in this close, I actually like to sort of see if I can follow the texture. See if I can, even though I'm going to go in and erase this most of it anyway, I like to see if I can sort of get something that starts to blend a little bit in terms of the shape of what it is and where it is that I'm going to go. So for example, I'm going to shrink, I'm going to use my brackets, I'm going to shrink this down a little bit, and I'm going to kind of zip in between these grains here. I'm going to do the same here. All right. And my shift key, I'll really get rid of this stuff. All right. And in fact, because I think I'm going to have quite a bit more, or I think I'm going to have some seams under here anyway, I'm definitely going to erase that seam. And over here, just going back and forth, and this little knot looks like it could be problematic. Let me make sure I get rid of all this black here. Things like knots, really distinctive knots, when you see those repeated over and over and over, it's kind of a dead giveaway that you have a texture. All right. I mean, it's a digital program, so obviously you're using textures, but again, it's a dead giveaway. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and turn my lower layer on. All right. And now if we zoom out, clearly we need to get rid of this, but at least we softened it up a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and crank that up a little bit. Maybe crank up my brush size by hitting my bracket key. And it looks like my opacity is at about 60%, and that's pretty good. So now I'm just going to start kind of going back and forth, taking that out. Taking that out a little bit as well. Now it looks like my guides are getting in the way a little bit, so I'm just going to go to View, and I'm going to clear those guides out of the way. All right. And I want to, again, make sure I'm on the correct layer that I'm erasing. That's looking pretty good. And now I'm going to shrink my brush just a tad. Start to follow some of this grain here. And now, right where I went up here, I'm going to take the opacity down, and I'm just going to see if I can't fade this little part out just a little bit more. Okay, now I'm going to make my brush a little bit larger. And that looks a little, we need to smooth that out just a bit. There we go. Not too shabby. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now remember, this part here and that part there are going to tile seamlessly when they actually become tiles. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift over here, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go down to Merge Layers. All right, and now what I have is, if we go up to Image, we go to Image Size, I should have a 2048 by 2048 pixeled, perfectly square, perfectly tileable image. Now, this was done fairly quickly. We can maybe smooth that out a little bit there, but for the most part, pretty good, not too shabby for something done so quickly. Okay, I think in the next lesson, or at least in class, we're going to take these and we're going to learn a little bit about applying these to our objects. You already know how to use texture maps, but we're going to bump it up a notch. Okay, thanks. I'll see you in the next lesson.